The forward roll, we need to make sure that we can get our hips and legs in the right position and that we can get our head out of the way when we go to roll. Our first drill is simply finding a balance point. Hand goes on the floor, other hand goes out to the side. This is the shoulder that we're going to be putting our weight on. Notice that my palms to the ceiling. This will allow us to pivot on the shoulder a bit more nicely. Bringing the shoulder to the floor, I then lift my hips up over the shoulder by going onto my toes. I want to find a position with my legs up in the air. Once again, notice that I've got this space in front of me. I'm not collapsing my legs down. The tricky part here is to make sure that the legs don't go in a funny position. I don't want my leg to go out to the side, but it stays pointing up towards the ceiling, and I keep my legs in a front split orientation. Our front split is done with both my legs facing the same direction. So we want to have the same idea in the forward roll. From a different angle, shoulder is down on the ground. I lift my leg up in the air. I don't have the leg out to the side, but I lift it up towards the ceiling. Why does this happen? When we're putting the shoulder on the ground, to be able to have any sense of balance there, we need to get the hips stacked over our balance point. If you're unable to do this, you will often bring the leg over to the side to help try to counterbalance. If my hips are shifting way over to the side and they're not stacked over the shoulder like so, in order to get that counterbalance, I need to bring this leg to the side. I call this doing the pancake position because your legs resemble what we do in our pancake stretch. How do we solve this? One, you need to squeeze through the side, do a bit of side flexion. So rather than having the hips off to the side, I really squeeze through my torso into side flexion to stack the hips on top of my shoulder. Depending on your mobility in your spine, this may be very challenging, but still do your best to get the hips stacked up so you can have the leg straight on top. If you're in this position nicely, you should be able to find a slightly comfortable position where eventually you may be able to lift the foot. This is not a 100% necessary step, but it does do a lot to help you start to learn how to balance on your shoulders and later on be able to switch between shoulders and really have a good understanding of where you are in space as you're rolling. Once you hit this position, there's no need to jump into the roll. The next step is to simply take this leg, which is in the same alignment as my leg on the floor, and I reach in the direction that I want to go, and it pulls me into the roll. From this point, the only detail that we need to be aware of is moving our head out of the way. So, we put the shoulder on the floor, and one little warm-up drill you can do is moving your head in and out of the gap created by your other arm a few times. Shoulders down, now I have a gap underneath this arm. I slide my head through and back. When practicing this drill, which is necessary for those of you who have a hard time pivoting on the shoulder and moving your neck out of the way, go slow, don't try to force a ton of range all at once, and you can do whatever you want with your feet. Depending on your hip mobility, you may need to adjust your foot position to get your head through and then adjust it again to get your head out of the way. In the beginning, do whatever you need to do, but make sure you can pivot on the shoulder that's on the ground and be able to move your head in and out of the gap. When we put this all together into the full roll, I place the shoulder on the ground, my leg is up in the air. As I reach in the direction that I want to go with this leg, I simply tuck my chin to my chest, pulling my head through the gap. And I roll over nicely. Final detail in the forward roll I really want to make sure that you're aware of. The legs do not switch in the air. Whichever leg is up in the air becomes the first one at all times. My right leg is up in the air because I'm on my left shoulder. So this leg is going to lead the whole action, simply bend once it reaches the floor, and the other leg comes on top into this seated position. Really common mistake is we all have one favorite side. So one side you'll do this perfectly, the other side you'll mess up a few times until you get it sorted. The mistake is to switch the legs so that the second leg follows up. I'll do it one more time, hopefully you can see it all the way in the camera. First leg's up in the air, switching the legs underneath. This is a bad habit to get into. Make sure you can do it with that first leg leading correctly on both sides.